So I read you take commissions. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I have recently started doing commission work because my dream is not only just to be a cosplayer, but I kind of want to create not necessarily a business, but just a name in the way of being able to costume. I've done it for 8 years now, and I've gotten better about it to the point where now I feel like the things that I make are worthwhile, and I can make better than the things that people can find on eBay. Because a lot of the costumes that come off of eBay don't come from seamstresses who care. They come from a business, an industry where they're just trying to produce a mass variety of them and don't necessarily take the time to make sure they are all custom fit. I have recently opened myself up for commissions to start on, and so long as it's within a reasonable time range, I can pretty much knock out anything. From the costumes that I made, I've probably made it over about 70 costumes now. I feel like I've gained enough experience that my commissions are not only are they reasonably priced, but they held together really well, and they hold up nicely. I've done about 4 commissions so far, and I'm really hoping to pick that business up because I know there's a lot of people in Florida who love to cosplay but just don't have the sewing skills. So I not only do commissions, but I've also taught several people how to sew and make costumes off of that. Namely, my best friend, her name's Yvette. She moved to Texas last year. But she and I started cosplaying together, and she had been new to it. She didn't know how to sew. She didn't know how to make anything. She was buying her costumes because they were her only way of making them. And we became instant friends. I started teaching her how to sew, and now she's my best friend and cosplay buddy for life. So it's something that I've dreamed of doing, is being able to afford to make costumes for myself and afford to make costumes for other people because I feel like I've got the determination and drive to do so.
Yeah, that's interesting. The way you kind of put that, because I like to be both a photographer and a cosplayer. And then one thing I've been thinking about is off and on, should I charge for, say, convention shoots? And for me personally, I don't want to consider myself a professional photographer, but because picture the equipment and everything is very expensive, it's kind of very tough. But at the same time, there are people out there who want my talent. It does help me get my name across a little bit more than being the random guy who takes pictures.
I completely understand. I mean, especially when it's a photography thing. I think the hardest thing for cosplayers who have really decent and amazing costumes. I've seen tons of them at Florida conventions. I think the biggest problem is being able to find the photos that people take later, or finding someone who's willing to take really great photos, or just sit down with you for 10 minutes and just take a couple snaps of that shot of that costume. So you may not wear that costume a second time. You may not wear it for a couple years.
Yeah.
But the memories of wearing it is really nice. And so when you find a photographer who doesn't mind, taking some of their time out of their weekend to relax and enjoy, to help you get memories and, just really great photos of your costumes, I think that's a really great thing to do. And even if it costs them $20 or $30 to get those photos done, considering the amount of time that photographer is going to take to edit and get those pictures back to you, I think that it's really a great thing to happen, the way that photographers and cosplayers can work together for that.
That's kind of funny you said $20 and $30. I've actually just started about thinking of having it start at like $8. Which I don't know if that's under or over. According to some people I've talked to, that's probably a bit under for me. But it's really just trying to recuperate some of the costs. And I understand from the way you talk about being a cosplayer and me having done some cosplay work, having some way to recuperate the cost, but also give something back at the same time. That would be the kind of exchange I would want to look for. And one thing, being a photographer, I used to rely a lot on the cosplayer to come up with poses and come up with things, but now I know some people, they don't really understand that, and now that I've kind of also developed ways of trying to direct people and to, get things that they may want to do look right for a photo, or if they don't have anything, come up with ideas with them.
I think that's really important for a cosplayer and a photographer to keep in mind, because I know a lot of people will like to dress up in costumes because they're a lot of fun and they make you feel special because you're doing something different, because you're standing out in the crowd. But not many times does everyone consider posing for that character. And for a photographer to have to try to work with someone who has no poses in mind is very difficult work. I've seen it happen, and it's not as easy as them coming up together with poses, especially if you're not familiar with the series, especially when you do something that's kind of off the wall. I've cosplayed from like baby series that no one has ever heard of before, and it's just like, you have to be familiar with the character as a photographer to be able to take photos of them that are going to be geared toward the character, or have them help you assist in making the poses. And I think it's kind of like a cooperative effort between the two to find things that are going to look nice and find things that are going to kind of guide you toward the actual personality of the character. And I think that it's a really good thing to keep in mind when someone's going to cosplay or something, or when a photographer's going to take photos. I know that when I've done work with photographers before, a couple of times, I try to make sure I have a couple poses in mind, but that I leave it also open for them to kind of choose where they want me to go with things. Because some photographers and some cosplayers come with ideas in mind, and then they just kind of have to morph it together into what will come out as a finished product and look like a finished piece of work.
Very well put. So I noticed when you were talking about costuming, you'd mentioned maybe in a way not so much start a business, but I guess put your name out. And right now I'm kind of in school for television and film. That's something I hope to do. And costuming, that's a big part of that. Did you ever imagine maybe that could be a business you could also look into?
Absolutely. My best friend in Texas, Yvette, like I mentioned earlier, she's actually a TV productions major. And a lot of times when she would have projects to do, music videos, commercials, things like that, she would kind of draw from her friends that were in cosplay to fill in, because not that I would say that it's a stereotype, but a lot of cosplayers, the ones that not necessarily take it serious, but have the most fun with it. They tend to also have a higher self-esteem, and they tend to really show up well on camera. So it's something that kind of works together in a way. And I think that part of what makes a video good or a commercial good is also the way that people look in the videos, what they're wearing, how it relates to the overall message. And I think that most definitely there is a market out there for costuming in the industry and costuming in different videos or whatever the skit happens to be. I've seen a lot of cosplayers who've gone straight with their costuming straight into plays and production companies because there's a calling for it. I think now that the economy has kind of changed, there is now a way for homemade crafted items to kind of be accepted into the general populace, and it makes way for the whole costuming and cosplaying bit to come out. 10 years ago, cosplay was almost non-existent. Now you could see someone walking across the mall in a Sailor Moon costume, and no one would even, think twice, other than, hey, that girl has really long hair, because it's just kind of become accepted.
We're talking about cosplay. What was the last convention you went to?
Metrocon 2011.
What did you think of it?
Personally, I had a good time because I went with my best friends and my sister. We stayed at a hotel nearby, and we went all 3 days. Friday, we only showed up towards the end of the day to get our IDs and passes, but everyone we talked to was rather in a fairly good mood. The staff members seemed like they were really having a good time, and it was just an overall nice experience. Saturday became a little bit busier. The panels, sometimes it was a little confusing where things were being held because there wasn't so much direction or instruction going around, but I felt like, at least for the convention people, everyone seemed like they were in a fairly good mood, and they all seemed to be enjoying themselves, which is a good thing to find at a convention. It was a lot larger than it was a couple years ago. I went in 2008, and it was the same time the flu tug was going on, so there was a lot of madness going on back then. So this convention for me was a lot more enjoyable. I've heard good and bad reviews from other people, but my experience was really, really nice. I made a couple new friends. I met up with some people I'd met online previously. I got to see some old cosplay buddies of mine I hadn't seen in years, and it was just a really, really good time for me.